Hello and welcome to the Next Minute podcast. So on the podcast, as always, we're opening up the conversation on grief, mental health, with no filters, no stigma. Every episode brings stories of struggle, resilience and hope, because even when life feels heavy, there's always light waiting to break through. So what I want to do today is going to be, I always say this, it's going to be a little bit different. So today I'm going to talk about Andy's Man Club, which is a support group I've been using for the past 2 years, since July 2023. And the reason I want to talk about it is because it's obviously very close to me. I've mentioned it before in the past, or plenty of times on the podcast, but I've never really gone into detail about exactly what happens at a session, and the intricacies of it. So what I'm going to do today, just sort of run through what Andy's Man Club is, and then towards the end I'll sort of run through the questions that we ask at Andy's Man Club as if I'm answering them at one of the sessions, just so hopefully you can get a feel of, and a sense of what it's like, sort of running through those sessions. So what is Andy's Man Club? So it's a UK-based men's mental health charity. It's peer-to-peer support groups that are run every Monday except bank holidays across the UK. I think there's over 320 clubs, literally from top of Scotland straight down to like Cornwall, right down south. They're for any man over the age of 18, and there's a simple ethos that it's okay to talk. So Andy's Man Club, it's a safe, judgment-free space where men can talk openly about mental health, struggles, anything they're dealing with, or generally just come for the social aspect of it, come down, meet up with some of the guys. A lot of people will come down, they'll use it because they're struggling, and when they get in a better place, they'll continue using it because they've built those relationships with the attendees, they've built those friendships with the people, and they'll just continue coming back. All groups are free, confidential and run by volunteers, many of whom have lived experience with mental health challenges. So every man that's walked through those doors, every person, whether it's a facilitator, an area lead, or the guy sitting next to one of the groups, they've all walked through those doors. They've all had something going on in their life that's brought them to Andy's Man Club. That could be a trauma, it could be addiction, it could be something as simple as loneliness. You don't have to be suicidal to attend, you don't have to be, literally at rock bottom. A lot of people will come just because it's something, like I said earlier, there's a social aspect to it. A lot of people will come, even myself when I first started going, one big reason was loneliness and just having a sense of community with the group and just building, those friendships up. As always, one of the big messages is it's okay to talk. The guys in those groups live by that. It's some people will come, they might not talk, for the first few sessions. They're just getting used to it, they're understanding how it works, what people are talking about. But once they get into it and they've heard some of the stories, I was the same. I had the impression that on my first session, I wasn't going to talk. I kept saying it to myself, I'm going to go, I'm not going to talk, I'm just going to listen. And in that first session, I heard a couple of people talk, and I was like, if they can talk about what they're opening up about, I can certainly talk about what I've got going on. So that's Andy's Man Club. Now, why did Andy's Man Club start? So Andy's Man Club was started by Luke Ambler and his mother-in-law Elaine Roberts. It was founded in 2016, and it was after Andy Roberts, so obviously the namesake. Andy Roberts took his own life. He died by suicide. Andy was Luke's brother-in-law, and Luke realised at that point that there was a need for a place where men could talk. There wasn't really anything around back then. You're talking almost 10 years ago. There wasn't really, just mental health in general wasn't really a big topic. There was still a massive stigma, there still is. I think groups like Andy's Man Club and a lot of the other services and things like that around are breaking that stigma But back then, 2016, there wasn't really anything big or up and coming where people could, were aware of things and where to go for help. So Luke saw that need. Like I said, he spoke with Elaine and his mum, and between them they set up Andy's Man Club. It started off as one group in Halifax. I think it was in a coffee shop. I can't remember if it was 9 or 11 guys, but the small group turned up, and that small group in Halifax 2016 grew into 324 groups, I think, on the latest Monday, with just under 7,000 men attending. So in the space of 9 years, that growth is phenomenal and shows how much of a need there is for groups like this. So at the meetings, to start off with, we'll sit in a circle. I'll run through an intro. I'll let guys know there's no pressure to talk. We use a little foam ball with Danny's Man Club sign on. We pass that around. It's as simple as, if you've got the ball, it's your turn to talk or not to talk. If you don't want to talk in a session, just simply pass the ball on. Nobody's going to pull you up and go, hang on, you didn't talk then. You've got some time if you want to get anything off your chest. If you don't want to talk, just simply pass it on. And there shouldn't be anyone pulling you up on that. There's absolutely no pressure to talk. There's a simple goal: support, connection, reducing isolation. And it's as simple as that. There's no judgment, there's no pressure. So who's it for? Any man or any person who identifies as a man over the age of 18, regardless of any background or circumstances. There's no referral, no diagnosis, paperwork or anything required, no signing up. Just simply turn up to your local group. If you go on the Andy's Man Club website, I think on the first page it's just find my local club. Just type in your postcode or your area, and it'll bring up any of the local clubs close to you. So when you get there, you walk up to the door. How does it work? So first of all, you'll be greeted at the door by facilitators. They'll walk through what to expect, answer any questions you might have, check in with you. And then once they've done that, they sort of give you a bit of a brief as to what to expect when you walk in. They'll sit you down, grab your brew and a biscuit, and make sure you're comfortable. There's obviously going to be a ton of anxiety going on for most people, especially on the first night. So those guys are on hand just to make sure that you're okay, you're comfy, and you're ready to be supported by the group. So once everyone's in, it hits 7 o'clock. We'll commence. We'll run through the introductions as one group. So depending on obviously the size of the group, there could be 10 people there could be 30. But we always do the first set of introductions as one group. That's essentially just to welcome everyone, run through the ground rules, which is no discussing politics, religion, medication or criminal matters. I think you can sort of talk about how they feel, but obviously not going into detail. So if there's been something changed or something's come up, you can sort of talk about how that's impacted you and made you feel. You just can't talk about the details or obviously go into anything political or religious. We also then emphasise that the groups are confidential and that there's no note-taking allowed. Whatever is discussed within the club stays within the club. The only time that might be broken is if someone presents a risk to themselves or others, at which point the relevant safeguarding or action will be taken. That might be we just simply need to ring our safeguarding lead at AMC or contact the relevant emergency services, depending on obviously the situation. But safeguarding is key within these sessions. Once we've run through that, we just do a quick sort of individual introduction. So we simply just pass the ball around and just let each person introduce themselves and give a short positive reason why they're there. Now, for a lot of people, if it's the first time, they might feel like there's sort of nothing positive going on. But we always just say, if you've walked through those doors tonight, you've realised there's a need for some help. So that's a positive reason that you're here today. Once we've done that, we've introduced each other. We'll break up into smaller groups depending on the numbers. And we start with the first 3 questions, and they stay the same each week. Then we'll have a short break if time allows, and then come back for the last 2 questions. And those last 2 questions change each week. They're designed a little bit more reflective and engaging, just to sort of leave the guys on a lighter note. Once the questions are done, we'll run through an outro just to end the session. But we've got the rooms usually till 9 o'clock. So if we finish early, a lot of guys will sort of sit around and just sort of, have a chat and a catch up. Like I said, the social aspect of AMC is huge. I've seen that in the various groups I've been to, that it kind of, each club builds its own community within it, and it's, for me, it's been fascinating to see, like I said, across the few groups I've been involved in. So, what are the 5 questions? So I'm going to run through the 5 questions from this week, and what I'm going to do is just answer them as I would do on a Monday night, just to give you a sense of what it can be like, and basically how I would usually answer them. So question 1 is, how's your week been? For me, I've had a pretty tough week. I think it's not been full of anything like major going on, but it's been tiring. It's been exhausting. Elijah's been going through some things which I'll get onto on question 3. That's sort of been the catalyst, basically, for me being tired, and it's obviously not anything he's doing wrong. But generally the week, work week's been fine. I sort of stayed busy in work, was in the office on Wednesday, which is always good. Just seeing the team, because we only get together once a month. And then the weekend, I do it at the weekend. I can't remember what I did at the weekend. I'm completely gone. I'll literally do this every Monday. I can never remember what I've done at the weekend. That was it. We got the Christmas tree down and some decorations, so we put that up. I know it's still November, but I feel like I've been late putting it up this year. But that's pretty much just been a standard week. And then obviously the weekend, getting the tree up, getting the decorations up, and just spending some time with the kids. They were away Saturday night, they stayed out. So I got a bit of sort of me time, which I just used to clear the house, gut it, get ready for the tree and the decorations. And then, got the kids back on the Sunday, and that was when we sort of put the decorations up. We had a little games night, and then a little chill. That wasn't too bad. So that's pretty much been my week. Question 2 is one positive from your week. Now, generally, there'll be a few guys who say, I've actually got a couple, and they'll just sort of run through a couple of them as they come through. So, one positive from my week. It's actually related to Andy's Man Club. Elijah said he was talking about, or they were learning about charities in school, and he recognised or wanted to talk about Andy's Man Club. So he kind of stood up and was talking about Andy's Man Club, and he was telling his class about everything that I do and what Andy's Man Club does and how it helps men. And when I spoke to him, when he was telling me about it, he literally just rifled off like everything that we do. And it was nice that he's obviously paid attention to me talking about it. He's taken it on board. And the big thing for me, which might be positive, is he knows that, obviously when he turns 18, but he knows he's got a space to talk. I'll touch on question 3, but knowing as well from what he was talking about, he knows that he can talk to me. And from what he was saying about Andy's Man Club in this presentation, this talk he did at school, showed me how much he listens, but how much he knows that he can come and talk to me when he needs to as well. And that was the big thing for me. And when he was telling me that, he was just like so excited to tell me, I was in tears. Just because I was proud, and I felt like it was, if one thing I'd done right. I know there's been many. I'm awesome, but it felt like one of the big things you've done right as a parent. So that was a really really nice positive. So question 3, anything you want to get off your chest? So for me this week, I've been the last few weeks actually, it's been quite common. And I think I've spoke about it the last few times I've been at AMC, but like Elijah's been really struggling. He's like most nights, some mornings, or just sometimes throughout the day at the weekend, he'll just come up to me and tell me he's missing his mum, and then he'll get like really upset, to the point where sometimes he's been hysterical. He's just been like completely sobbing his heart out, and most of the time like there's nothing that kind of can console him or snap him out of it. So I've just got to sit there and comfort him, which is so hard to do. You just feel like helpless, and that's where I've really struggled and why it's been so draining, because I want to do so much more to help him, but I know at the same time I can't. He's just got to feel it and process it, and that's the hard thing for me to accept, that I can't fix it for him every time. Sometimes I can not distract him, but we'll find a story about his mum or a memory or something like that, and we'll talk about that, and that will help him. That will sort of get him talking, which then breaks the cycle of crying and sobbing. And then because he's talking, it doesn't necessarily distract him, but he's then talking about his mum rather than crying and just saying he's missing her. So it does work sometimes. But I mean, the other night I was sat in my office, gaming, and I could hear him crying. This was like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I could just hear him sobbing, and he just kept crying, "Mummy." Like, it was so heartbreaking, just to like 11 o'clock at night. So he must have been asleep, and if he'd not, he'd been awake for the past 2-3 hours since he's gone to bed. And he was just laying in bed, just crying. And I've gone in, and he's got his blanket all over his head. And it was just hard to see him like that. Like, it was different from coming up to me and crying, to find him in his bed, sobbing his heart out like that. It was just like, I don't know if he'd had a bad dream. He didn't really talk about it. I just went in, gave him a cuddle, and then I picked him up, and he got in my bed. And it was just, like I said before, it's just so hard, 'cause there's so many times where I feel like I just can't fix it for him. I can't take that pain away. But then on the flip side, it's so different from Koa, because I mean, Elijah had 2 years with Taylor, and there's, I think part of it is his memories are fading, and I think he's finding that bit really hard. I ended up reaching out to Winston's Wish, which is a children's bereavement charity, so they support kids who've lost a relative. I reached out to them. They sent me some resources. They sent me some resources through school, for school to use, which was good. They're always brilliant whenever I reached out to them. But again, it was like there's only so much that will work. A lot of it was just like worksheets for him to kind of work through, which might help. I've got them there. I just need to go through some with him and see which ones he wants to do, because I think some of them might upset him as well. But I think some of it as well, I can't remember if this was the same day, but in school they were learning about like different types of families. So one of those is obviously families without a mum or a dad. And he got really upset, but he didn't speak to anyone in school. So the teacher was brilliant. She spoke to him beforehand, but fortunately nobody checked in with him after. And I explained, I said, you've got a class of 30 kids. They don't expect to just single, the ones out that might be upset by it. If they're not showing it, that's a different story. And I think kids are brilliant at masking their emotions sometimes. So nothing against the school or how it was handled, but he'd pretty much, as soon as I picked him up and got him in the car, he just broke down. And from like 3:30 till 10, 11 at night that night, he was just on and off sobbing, and it was so draining. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but just seeing your child like that and then constantly reassuring them and supporting them, it just takes it out of you. But then you feel guilty for being drained by it as well. So it's just never ending. Yeah, so that I think was one of the triggers on that particular day, and I think that's kind of sat with him for a little bit. Then I picked him up on Friday this week, and he was upset again. And it turns out that they're going to a panto next week, and the one that they're watching is Peter Pan. So when I picked him up, he was upset about that because Peter Pan was his mum's favourite film and story. So he's kind of obviously linked the two when he's found out what they're going watching. And he's been upset about that. A lot of the time, like I said, they mask their feelings in school, so he knows, and I know his teacher spoke to him, and he knows that his teacher's there if he wants to talk. But like I was saying earlier when I was answering question 2, he waits till he comes home to talk to me. So I think that's something I need to work on. He's letting him know that there's other, people within school that he can talk to if he's feeling, upset at school. He's got a diary that we have sent him in with that he can use if, he's feeling like he's struggling or anything. So he's got that. He's got a couple of things he can do, but I just want to make sure he knows that wherever he is, he's got someone safe to talk to. He's not going to judge him or anything like that. He knows he's got an adult or just a support person he can go to. And that should be the same for any kid. But yeah, that was my question 3. A little longer than usual. But it just felt really heavy. And like I said, this week in particular, it's just been exhausted, to be honest. I'm doing okay mentally, just feeling drained and tired. So at this point, we'd usually go for a little break. I'm not going to leave the podcast and go make a brew. So once we've had the break, we'll come back for question 4. And then obviously question 5. So question 4 last week was, what new behaviour or habit has most improved your life and why? Now, I knew I was asking myself this, and I completely forgot what I was going to say. It's completely gone at my head. What new habit? Oh, that was it. It was actually doing this podcast. Oh, this podcast kind of led to a new habit. So self-reflection is really what I'm getting to. So from doing this podcast, particularly season 1, where I read through my old blogs and I was reflecting on where I was 5 years ago compared to now. That was massive for me. Just from doing that, like, I've started to dream fairly regularly again, and I attribute that to basically that self-reflection, looking at where I was and how far I've come, and it's just given me a much more positive outlook and a much more positive, perception of myself as well. Whereas I feel like before I did that, I constantly was thinking I was that person who was still stuck, in that dark place, or that, I was still as low as I was. But it was good, in a sense, to sort of read it back, see where I was and where I am now, be proud of myself for it. You know, I've overcome a lot. Not just from the grief side, but from the parenting side as well. You know, I'm still winging it, but I feel like I'm getting more of it right now than I was. And I think that's a big thing. But yeah, self-reflection is probably the habit or the behaviour that's most improved my life recently. Question 5 is, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be? So for me, I want to see the Northern Lights. We've tried Iceland. It didn't quite work out. Went with Taylor. It was the year after we got married. So we got married in October. And in the January, we went to Iceland. We didn't get to see the Northern Lights. They just weren't visible when we went on the few nights we were there. But we we went to the Blue Lagoon. Taylor had booked it all, but we'd ended up booking the coach and stuff, take us to the Blue Lagoon, but we'd ended up booking the Blue Lagoon for the day after. So when we was on this coach trip going around Iceland, looking at all the glaciers and everything like that, one of the stops was the Blue Lagoon. Now, we'd accidentally booked that visit for the day after. So when we turned up, everyone else from the coach went into the lagoon, and me and Taylor were just kind of sat there going, right, how do we get back now? And they tried to get us in, to be fair, but they just said it was too full. So we went and paid for a really expensive meal in there. Had the meal, and then I can't remember if we got the coach back or we just jumped in another coach that was leaving earlier than ours, just to go back. And I think we ended up just went for a couple of drinks when we got back. But yeah, I'd definitely go somewhere like Norway or Iceland. I'd love to do Iceland again, and I think this time I'd probably hire a car and just sort of go exploring myself. Well, yeah, Iceland or Norway. Just the Northern Lights, really. So that's the 5 questions. I've probably talked for more than I usually would, but probably 10 minutes at most. Generally, I'd say anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. You'd probably talk for one of these sessions, and that's if you want to talk. You know, you might not answer every question. You answer to question 1 might just be, I've had a tough week, and then you pass the ball on. You know, it could be as short or as long as you want it to be. The only time somebody would interject, like one of the facilitators, is if you either start repeating yourself, or you feel like you kind of get lost in thought. Then we might jump in just to get you back on track. Remind what the question is and stuff. But generally speaking, you probably talk for anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes, and it's not like a presentation where you've got to prepare anything, or you feel like you've got everyone looking at you. What you'll find is that the guys will give you that time to talk. If you're sat there with the ball and you build up the courage, or you're processing what you want to get out, no one's going to rush you on or start sort of prompting you. You do it in your own time, and that's exactly how it should be. The good thing is about Andy's Man Club, like I mentioned before, I think at the last count there was 324 groups. Now, no matter which one you go to, each of those groups will run exactly the same. The only difference is up in Scotland, where you're not allowed to talk about football either, for obvious reasons. But generally, it's the same format. You'll be greeted at the door at every club. We've got the same 5 questions throughout, got the same rules, the same intros, the same outros. So no matter where you go, if you work up and down the country, if you're visiting family and you've been to one local, if you go to one while you're away, it's going to be exactly the same. Be different people, but it should all run more or less exactly the same. So that's pretty much it. That's Andy's Man Club. I started going, like I said, in July 2023. Now, a lot of people, I did this, will try and talk themselves out of it. So I was going on my first week when Wigan opened back in July 23. I turned around on that first week and convinced myself that I didn't need it. Convinced myself that my problems weren't as big as others, or mine were insignificant compared to other people's. And I talked myself out of it. So I turned around and went home that week. Now the second week I was on the phone to a friend, and they made sure that I went, and that's what I needed, just that little push to get there. Now, I'm someone I was widowed at, I can't remember what I was, 20, was it 20, 30, 29, 30, 5 years ago. Obviously, my wife was 25 when she died. It was completely unexpected. I just had a newborn baby, 12 hours old, had a toddler, 2 years old when she died, and everything that sort of comes with grief. I had PTSD. I was suicidal for a while, and I still convinced myself that I didn't need to go and talk about my problems. Now, like I said before, you don't have to have been through a traumatic event. You don't have to, be at completely rock bottom. I wasn't when I went. I went because I felt like I was just a little bit overwhelmed. I needed to talk to someone. But at that point, I'd more or less dealt with my grief. I just hadn't really spoken about it. Oh, not honestly, I'd say. I had wore a mask for a long time. Pretended I was more okay than I was. I got through that suicidal spell. But yeah, on that first night that I was supposed to go, even with everything I'd been through, I convinced myself, my problems weren't as big as anybody else's. The thing is, your problems are, relatable to you. It doesn't matter what anybody else's problems are. If you're struggling, if you need to talk, like I said, if it's just loneliness was the biggest thing I was battling. And I know to a lot of people, like, oh, just lonely, go and see your brother, or, your family, whatever. Some people don't have that privilege. And for me, that wasn't, something that helped me. A lot of the times when I was going seeing family, I felt like the odd one out. And that's not anything they'd done. But I kind of felt like a black sheep for a while. So visiting friends and family was hard for me. And in a lot of cases, it made me more lonely. Seeing my relatives, my family with their own families. And mine, at that point in my head, I thought mine was broken. But that loneliness for me was probably one of the biggest things that I was battling and still battle now. It's not as prominent as it used to be. But I think I was talking to my brother Chris last week, and I think it was last weekend when I didn't have the kids on the Saturday. I just got floored by loneliness. It just grips you. You don't expect it, but every now and then it just becomes overwhelming. Like I said, I wasn't at rock bottom. Yeah, I've been through a trauma, but that wasn't at that point the reason I needed to talk. I was going through a lot of stuff. But if you feel like you need a safe place, I always refer to it as my fortress of solitude. One, because I love Superman. But two, because I feel safe there. You can go, no matter what you're talking about, no matter what you're feeling. One of the most powerful things is when you're talking and you look up from that ball, you'll see the guys nodding, because they might not have the same story as you, but they know what you're feeling. They know, or they can relate to what you're going through and what you're talking about. So, yeah, if you're a man over the age of 18, like I said, anybody who identifies as a man over the age of 18, if you feel like you need a safe place to talk, I would definitely recommend Andy's Man Club. You can find your local group on their website, and like I said, it's free. You don't need to be referred. You don't need to sign up. You don't need to let anybody know you're going. You can just turn up. If if you don't feel like you can go to your local group, maybe go to the one in the next turnover. That's what I did. I did end up going to. I've got one 2 minutes down the road from me. Instead, I'll drive 30 minutes or 15 minutes now to my next local one. just because I didn't want to go to the one on my doorstep. That was just a personal preference. But like I said, no matter which one you go to, it's exactly the same format. So if you feel like you're struggling, if you're feeling lonely, you've been through something that you want to talk about, or you just want to go and be part, or feel like you're part of, a kind of community, and get yourself down. If you've got any questions or anything like that you want answering, either you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, or wherever. By all means, go for it. Or if you email info@andysmanclub.co.uk, they'll be able to sort of answer any questions for you. If you want them to come and do a presentation at your workplace, or if you want some promotional material to hand out, then that's the email to use. But hopefully this has helped. Andy's Man Club for me has been a saviour. It's been a light in what was a dark time for me, but building the friendships that I've built through this has been one of the biggest things for me in combating loneliness. I know now I can reach out to any one of them if I'm struggling, and they'll get back to me as soon as they can. But I'd definitely recommend it. So hopefully this has been helpful. Obviously, if you're not a man, you can't go, but you can recommend it. You can promote it, you can share the posts, you can tag people in it. Like I said, you can request presentations or promotional material, whatever you need. But if you remember anything from this, just remember it's okay to talk, and you can get through the next minute. So thank you everyone for listening. Like I said, you can follow us, Facebook, Instagram, we're on YouTube, and I think that's pretty much it. So thanks again, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Bye.